Should we add our friend, the Doc from Silver Doctors? Let's see how the Doc's doing today.
Hello.
Doc, how you doing, man?
Good. About yourself?
Good.
Good to talk to you guys again.
Good to talk with you. And you know what's fun about today? We have no particular agenda, although I should tell everybody that in looking at your website here, we should probably talk about the big lie and what happened to Ukraine's gold, and Jim Sinclair's alert that the dollar's reacting because the market knows Russia has a nuclear economic weapon. Ties into many of the conversations we've been having lately with our guests. But Silver Doctors, if you don't know, and who wouldn't, is one of the most popular precious metals websites in the world. According to Alexa, it's ranked in the top 4,000 websites in all of the country. Doc, what do you think explains your success?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's I think it's been about 3 years that we've been up. I think it's kind of a combination of analysis from all the contributors, the constant steady news flow, and kind of like you see with Sergeant Report. People are hungry for news, real news, and they're tired of just watching CNN and all the BS that the MSM propagates.
Yeah.
All the propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are hungry for real news, you know, the opposite of what CNN and Fox News provides, you know.
Did you see on CNN the other day, one of their anchors was trying to speculate on what happened to that Malaysian Airlines? The one anchor, and I kid you not, he said he thought maybe a black hole swallowed the airline up.
Yeah, well,
a mysterious black hole appeared just over the airplane and then disappeared.
It didn't suck in the whole Earth, just the airplane.
Just the airplane.
That was his thought of what happened.
Well, and they wonder why their ratings are at really an all-time low. Have you guys been following Jim Rickards at all here? He's got this new book coming out called The Death of Money, and
I've seen it. I've seen that he has that coming out. I haven't read it.
Yeah, I haven't read it either. I guess it's going to be released on April 8th, and he says in his words, and I just want to preface this by saying I think Rickards is establishment because, you know, he has done wargaming for the Pentagon, and he's got close ties, his company, he's got close ties as a consultant to the powers that be in our government, monetary and otherwise. But he says the book is, quote, about the collapse of the international monetary system, and that's not meant to be a provocative statement, end quote. And what I find interesting about that, let me play this clip for you guys. I just want to play this for you. This is from an interview that Rickards did with Kitco, and then I want to stop and I just want to give you my reaction to what he says here. Just take a listen.
You know, people enjoyed the part of Currency Wars, where my last book, where I talked about the war game in the Pentagon, but some people said, well, wait a second, Jim, how did you end up in the top secret weapons laboratory working with the Pentagon on the first financial war game? So I actually take my involvement with national security and, you know, capital markets aspects of national security back to an earlier stage, really all the way to 9/11, and talk about the insider trading that took place in American Airlines stock, United Airlines stock before 9/11. Now, when you say that, immediately a lot of people leap right into some frankly crazy conspiracy theories that the government was behind it, or, you know, et cetera. I really distanced myself from all that. There was insider trading ahead of 9/11. That's very well documented in the book. But it was not, you know, some U.S. government conspiracy. What it was associates of the terrorists, and that makes sense.
Now, the reason I want to play that clip for you guys is I find that very, very interesting and very telling, because anybody who knows the truth, and I can cite this article from Global Research, Michelle Chossudesky's very renowned and respected website there in Canada, that on 9/11 there was criminal foreknowledge and insider trading in the airline stocks that leads directly to the CIA and Executive Director Buzzy Krongard, who managed a firm that handled the put options on United Airlines. So the reason I wanted to play that clip is because I see Rickards as a gatekeeper, and he acknowledges that there was insider trading in the airline stocks on 9/11, but then says it linked to the terrorist associates, not any form of U.S. government. And what I find fascinating is that he is talking now openly about the collapse of the international monetary system and that it is going to happen. And I just find it fascinating. Where do you put that? What bucket do you put Jim Rickards in when he talks about the international monetary collapse? Because to me, as a gatekeeper, Rickards is representing the government. It's almost as though they want to acknowledge the fact that the collapse is truly coming. Officially, they want to acknowledge that. What's your take on all that, Doc?
Yeah, I've heard that before. I mean, certainly you make some valid points. I haven't really come to judgment one way or another whether I believe conclusively Rickards, whether he's establishment or not. Like I said, certainly there's valid points you make, and if he is, then yeah, certainly they do like to kind of tell their hand a little bit. I don't know if it's for conscience sake or just humor, so they can humor themselves that we told them what was coming. They just didn't decide to listen.
Yeah, it's interesting because, anyone as informed as Jim Rickards, if he's done any research at all, would know that what he's saying. I mean, he knows he's not speaking the truth. He's either intentionally misleading people by saying what he said about the put options and the insider trading on 9/11, or he's woefully uninformed, which I have a hard time believing. But when you talk about this government and the shenanigans that go on behind the scenes, it kind of takes us back to this mystery of the Ukrainian gold, the big lie, and what happened to Ukraine's gold. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty interesting that the government in Ukraine had 33 tons of gold as their gold reserves, and after what appears to be a CIA-instigated coup, suddenly they want the U.S. federal government to have keep their gold in safekeeping, and it was airlifted out of Ukraine. And an interesting note that we discussed with Kuz Jansen show on our SD Weekly Metals and Markets is Chinese gold demand for that week was 34 tons, almost exactly what the government of Ukraine's entire reserves were that were flown out and are already probably headed either to vaults in Frankfurt or else straight to Shanghai. And then another point that's interesting is the 33 tons were flown out on one airplane. And I find it rather humorous that there wasn't any logistical problems of flying out 33 tons of gold on an airplane overnight out of Ukraine, but the Federal Reserve claims that due to logistical concerns, they couldn't get more than 5 tons of Germany's gold repatriated to them in a year.
That's a great point. Well, maybe the New York Federal Reserve needs to get Blackwater involved in helping them get that gold transported, because as you guys know, there were reports of Blackwater on the ground in the Ukraine just days before that mystery plane took off, and I just wonder if those guys weren't there.
Maybe the New York Fed, all their elevators are busted and they can't get it up from the 5 floors below ground.
Well, gold is heavy.
I can understand that. If you'd have to carry every bar up 5 flights of stairs, it might take a couple days.
Yeah. Again, though, Blackwater could help take care of that. That's what they did with the Ukrainian gold, I think. I think those guys from Blackwater were there for just exactly that purpose. It is interesting that the reports are that those men were heavily armed, and that plane took off just about as fast as one could imagine under the cover of darkness, and it is an interesting story.
No logistical issues whatsoever.
No. What's crazy about it is that when we were talking to Alistair McLeod about the Ukrainian gold, he just kind of laughed and said 33 tons is just not that big a deal. It's not that much gold. I mean, it's what China eats up in a week.
Yeah, yes. 5 business days.
5 business days.
It's really insane when you think about China's appetite for gold. Which kind of leads me to this Sinclair Issues Alert article that you posted, dollar reacting because market knows Russia has a nuclear economic weapon. And financial gold expert Jim Sinclair has issued an email alert to subscribers warning that, quote, the dollar's reaction to the U.S. stepping up sanctions against Russia on Thursday indicates that the market knows Russia has a nuclear economic weapon it can detonate on the West by dropping the petrodollar standard, end quote. Doc, isn't it also true that Russia could liquidate any of their treasury holdings, which they've threatened to do, and maybe they've already done, and they've got a close ally in China, which is the largest holder, I think, of U.S. treasuries?
I actually would go with Sinclair on this, that I think really their trump card is their ability to move away from the petrodollar standard. Sure, they could theoretically dump. What do they have now? I think they're down to 300 or 350 billion in treasuries. So theoretically, they could do that, but I'd agree with Sinclair that really a bigger weapon they have is instigating the move away from the petrodollar. We had Putin actually stating that they were preparing to announce a major gas deal with China that would not involve the U.S. dollar. So when the Asian countries in particular finally begin the move and get the ball rolling, China and Russia starting it with a deal involving gas and oil, whether that's being traded in yen or rubles. When you start to see that ball get rolling, that's, in my mind, the potential has much bigger implications than even just Russia dumping 300 billion worth of treasuries, because the Fed can monetize that and buy those on the market with printed money, but the Fed can't do anything about the world turning away from trading oil and natural gas in dollars.
I just think it's amazing to watch Putin and Russia and China in kind of a big way, not a symbolic way, but in a very real way, stand up to the Western banking powers. Hey, I see you have another interesting article here posted on your site, Doc. It says, the Federal Reserve owns gold certificates, not gold. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? That's a great headline.
Yeah, it's a little known fact, but it is the case, really, that what they own is not a physical gold bullion. They own gold certificates valued at, $40 or $42 and change. And I'm sure their response would be, we can exchange those certificates in for gold at any time we choose. However, that would be valid if they hadn't already leased all the gold onto the market and rehypothecated it all. So,
Right. The way it used to work was that we the people would have the gold certificates, and we the people would be able to exchange our gold certificates for physical on demand at a bank, and presumably the bank would have its own vault full to fulfill those certificates. And it's interesting to hear that the Federal Reserve says, well, we can exchange those for gold at any point. Well, they're supposed to have the gold. I mean, why do they have gold certificates if they're supposed to have the gold? And to your point, it's because it's all been leased out and hypothecated and rehypothecated, which is what Jim Willie talks about all the time. I mean, the jig is up, right? I mean, the jig is up, and this paper Ponzi is going to come down, and it's in the process of coming down, which kind of gets back to this idea of Rickards talking about this international collapse. This international monetary collapse is truly coming. We've been talking about it for so long, Doc. I think people want to just hit the off switch when we bring it up, but it's a fact.
Right, and in the Fed's eyes, the Fed understands, when Bernanke told Ron Paul that he doesn't really understand why gold was going up and he just viewed it as tradition, he was just lying out of his butt.
Yeah.
The Fed understands what gold is, but they choose, however, to financialize it, and for the short term, it serves their interest to rehypothecate it and use it to leverage the dollar. But they understand what gold is and its value.
Can you flesh that out for people and remind people what to hypothecate and to rehypothecate means? Because it's really extraordinary when you understand what's been done with this gold. And a lot of people standing with gold certificates, paper gold, are going to have a rude awakening when the day of reckoning finally comes and they realize that they hold a certificate that may represent 100 different ounces of gold when they think it represents their 1 ounce.
Sure. Rehypothecation is just a fancy banking financialization term for basically what they do is whether you have any asset, you have a treasury bond or gold, you put that on deposit with the bank. They rehypothecate it, then it's then basically relent out to multiple different parties. So they all believe they have a claim to that gold. And that allows the bank to basically highly leverage that deposit, and leverage means you can make more money faster if the party keeps going on and the music keeps playing. The risk is that when the music stops and all 85 people that believe they have title to that same gold bar demand it back, that's when you better get in your chair first before the other 84 people. So the difference between unallocated and segregated allocated when we're talking about gold or silver bullion is that unallocated, the bank is pretty much guaranteed to have completely hypothecated that asset out. It's no longer there. It's been leased out, and you have a paper title to it that if you make it back first, you may be able to get some of your gold back. It's not going to be the same bars or serial numbers because they're gone. And if the proverbial crap hits the fan, you're probably going to be settling in cash if the firm doesn't completely fold, versus if you're talking segregated, allocated storage, that means your bars are actually stored in an allocated account in your name, and legally the bank is not, or whatever depository institution holding that asset is not allowed to hypothecate that out to other individuals.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, because I mean, it needs to be stated and restated that the paper gold and the paper silver game is a Ponzi, which will collapse. And when it does collapse, if you aren't holding physical, it's turned into a bit of a cliche, which is if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And we see that time and time again in the Cyprus thefts and with MF Global, and we see many, many examples of it. Rory, I know that you had some specific questions for the doc. Do you want to lay some of those out before we lose him?
Yeah, sure do. Thank you. Doc, this is a question that I'm asking a lot of people because I'm trying to get different perspectives, and so far I think it's working out pretty well. But here we go. With Moscow and Dubai and Singapore, and not to mention the Shanghai Gold Exchange, how much longer do you think that the LBMA and the COMEX are going to be able to maintain the precious metals pricing mechanism with all these other markets, the physical markets, not a paper market?
It's certainly an interesting question. I think that over the next 6 to 18 months, they're going to be forced to kind of take their foot off of the markets a little bit and allow the price to rise to somewhat dampen Asian demand, or basically the system will implode from demand. You're not going to be able to hold gold at $1,250 or sub $1,200 for another 3 to 6 months, or like you alluded to, all the vaults would be drained completely dry. So I think you're nearing the point here, and you're starting to see it already, that they're going to have to back off a little bit to allow the price to rise to somewhat dampen the Asian demand.
Do you think that as far as the price rising just a little bit, do you think that that's bringing any gold back into the market from the retailer at a retail level?
At a retail level, we're not seeing it much currently with SD bullion. I mean, certainly if you saw gold back above, I'd say 1,700 to 2,000, which I think is highly likely in the next 12 to 18 months, particularly with Friday, gold completed a golden cross with the 50-day moving average back above the 200. The last time the gold completed a golden cross, I believe, a true one, was in 2009, right after the post-Lehman collapse, which had seen gold taken down under 700. I think 673 was the low. And once it completed the golden cross, it ran to 1915 over, what was it, about 2.5 years. So it was a pretty substantial and massive move, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me. I expect you'll see quite a bit of resistance at 1650 in gold. Once that's cleared, it's going to run back to the highs, I believe, in the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
I know Eric Sprott and Sinclair are both calling for that to happen before the end of this year, so that's about 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Sprott has made it very clear that he expects like 2,100 or 2,400 for gold this year. He has said that on numerous occasions.
I'm not going to argue with Sprott. He's,
the Admiral?
The Admiral, right. Back in, what was it, 2000? I think October 2010, Eric came out, and I had him on the show Silver Doctors, and he had stated that silver would reach $50 within 6 months. And that was October of 2010. And then, if you'll recall, in first week of April 2011, right before the smash, silver hit 49.73, I want to say, within a quarter of $50. So I call that nailing it when silver was trading at the time around $18 to $20 an ounce.
And the other part, Doc, is with the global mining production obviously going through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, where is the gold coming from that's left, or for the rest of the world? Where do I get my gold? Where's my gold coming from? Where's
the
SD
Provident
bullions?
gold and the Atmex and the SD bullion gold coming from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the retail gold, and when you're talking about like U.S. Mint demand, Royal Canadian Mint demand, and the private companies like Coins and Things that provide the blanks for those retail coins, that's mainly coming from U.S. Mining production. So again, not every single ounce of U.S. mining production is heading east, but a good chunk of it is to satisfy Asian demand. I think the real question is, where is the bulk of Asian demand coming from when they're taking down every single ton that's mined in China, as well as from the West, and that's one of the reasons why the status quo from 2013 won't be able to continue this year. Either the system will break or the price will have to rise substantially. One of the main points being that a large portion of the inventory, it certainly looks like, was pillaged from the GLD. The GLD began 2013 with just under 1,400 metric tons of gold, and it finished the year with an inventory of 798 metric tons of gold. So it was over 550 metric tons that were removed from the GLD just in 2013. So that's a big portion right there of Asian demand and the gold that was used to meet that Asian demand. And then certainly we can speculate on other things like whether it's Ukraine's gold reserves, things like that. But certainly the GLD, it looks like, was a large source of the inventory, and that's just one of the ETFs.
Yeah, and according to Alistair McLeod, I mean, they're seeing dirty old bars that are coming through the Swiss refineries, the old 400 ounce 9995 LBMA standard bars that are coming through, and he said that the Swiss refineries don't like it because it requires more attention and takes longer to refine.
Dusty gold.
Dusty
Right,
gold,
exactly.
dirty gold.
I'll take dusty gold.
And I forget the exact numbers, but I remember Alistair had some pretty stellar research last summer of straight off of, I believe I can't remember if it was the Bank of England's website or the LBMA, of the drawdowns in the official gold held there that similarly matched the Asian demand for that period. So
just stunning numbers. Hey, I want to ask you something, Doc, before we let you go, before we lose you here. You guys are in the business of selling physical silver and gold. One of our premier sponsors, Provident, does the same thing. We just recently saw the collapse of a gold and silver retailer, Tulving. It's shocking to watch a well-known provider of these services, of providing people with the opportunity to get physical precious metals. It's shocking to watch them collapse and go bankrupt. First, what's your take on what happened with Tulving, and what a sad story for those that sent money and have not gotten their precious metals. What's your take on Tulving, and how do you guys handle your business to prevent such a thing happening to you? I mean, it seems like in such a tight margin business, it has to be a real nightmare.
Sure. Well, as far as Tulving, obviously the signs were on the wall for anybody doing their due diligence for really the past year. We've had customers notifying us, and really there's reports all over the internet for the past year that their orders weren't being shipped for months at a time, and nothing was shipped until they contacted the Better Business Bureau, and then maybe a few weeks later. So that's one thing I've always recommended all of our customers, is especially if you've never purchased, whether it's from us before or really for any large purchase, do your own diligence on the company before you just send money. And I mean, just the internet's a great tool. I mean, if you had done a Google search for Tulving fraud or there's a few other firms that if you do that are still in business, that if you do a search for their name and fraud, you're going to find a multitude of online reports and complaints of not getting bullion shipped to them. As far as what happened with Tulving, it would really be speculation on my part. It appears to be some sort of hedging gone wrong, that they had lost a great deal of money. It certainly looks like that they were trying to keep up, and certainly weren't just trying to run off with people's money, because they were still working and taking orders and shipping out. It sure seems to be that whether it was hedging gone wrong or what happened, but it eventually turned into using new customers' money to ship out the previous existing orders that had been sitting for a while. And as your business starts to spiral downward due to those delays, it comes to a point where there's just not enough new sales to satisfy those old customers, and you go bankrupt. But certainly the writing was on the wall for Tulving for the past year. And as far as your question of how do you prevent that, obviously the small margins, and we've kind of patterned ourselves similarly to provide the lowest margins really anywhere in the market. But the main thing is not exposing yourself to spot risk. And people always ask us, well, you're such a big fan of gold and silver, why are you selling your metal? And
It's not your personal metal.
Right, you're not. Number one, if it was just my personal metal, we'd be out of business in about 8 hours. And number two, what I always try to let people know is it's really no different than a grocery store. We started the business because of our strong beliefs in gold and silver and our wish to help spread the message and provide the average American with a method of preserving their wealth. So, I mean, that's why we started the business, not to unload my personal store of gold and silver. But it's really no different than a grocery store. Just because Kroger's or whatever grocery store you have near you, just because they sell milk and eggs, doesn't mean that they're trying to get rid of all their own milk and eggs.
Well, there needs to be an agent to help facilitate the purchase of
Exactly.
physical precious metals, because as anybody knows, not anybody can go directly to the U.S. Mint and buy boxes and boxes of pallets full of silver eagles. There's only a certain few approved retailers that have that relationship with the mint. Maybe it's 6 or 7. And so you guys act as an agent, a middleman, to be able to get the precious metals. Well, you know, Doc, it's always a real pleasure to talk with you, and we really appreciate you taking time away from your family on a day off, essentially, to spend some time chatting with us and our listeners. We really appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure, Sean and Rory. It's great to be back on with you guys.
We do appreciate it, and I'm sure that everybody out there knows all about Silver Doctors, but if you've been missing out, you can visit the Doc's site there at silverdoctors.com. One of the top websites for precious metals and monetary information on planet Earth. Thanks so much, Doc.
All right, thanks again for having me, guys.
All right, have a great day, buddy.
You too. Look forward to next time.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Rory.
Thank you.
And
Talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later. You guys have a great week, and thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for checking out sgtreport.com for all the latest in real news 24/7.